On this Tuesday night, a shocking collapse of a major bridge in Italy sends officials scrambling for answers. Even before the dust settled, the questions emerged about Italy's aging infrastructure in serious need of repair. In a country that sees, on average, nearly one collapse a year, what can be done to prevent the next tragedy?
Also tonight, the president calls his former protege a dog. Undeniably rude, but is it racist?
And their home became a horrific crime scene, their neighbor a murder suspect. Residents of the Fredericton apartment building return, but can they recover?
This is The National.
Was it a case of cutting corners in a bid to cut costs? Maybe the violent storm that raged overhead, or was it something else that caused a massive bridge to collapse this morning in northern Italy? It is still not clear, but one thing is sure. The entire country is shaken tonight, wondering if Italy's aging roads and infrastructure are unsafe. At least 26 people died when the bridge crumbled shortly before noon in Genoa. As Margaret Evans tells us, the search for more victims trapped in the rubble is expected to last all the way through the night.
The unthinkable, caught on camera through the storm. At first glance, as though a piece of the world had fallen away. The horror of those watching unmistakable as it became clear that in fact a section of the bridge had collapsed. Taking with it a stretch of the road, the vehicles on it tumbling into the valley some 45 meters below. Rescue workers rushing to the scene were dwarfed by great slabs of concrete, stone giants to be climbed in search of survivors. Sniffer dogs were brought in and long cranes, winching stretchers and aid workers through the air. Genoa's Morandi Bridge carried a major artery right through the city, the highway linking southern France to the Italian Riviera. Its collapse narrowly missed a community below, landing on rail tracks and part of a warehouse. Today, when I heard a bang, I thought of an earthquake, says this man. I heard people screaming, and I went out to see what happened. The bridge was built in the 1960s, a marvel of its time. This man says he worked on it. For 7 years, he says. Now I live under the bridge. I helped build it, and now it destroys my house. Questions about Italy's crumbling infrastructure are now swirling. The Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, pledging to hold the highway operators to account. I will do everything to get the names and surnames of the past and present managers, he said, because it is unacceptable to die like that in Italy. The task of recovering the dead, like the rescue operation, has been painstaking. From the information in our possession, says this official, 30 cars and some heavy vehicles were driving on the span of the bridge that collapsed. Some drivers clearly had a very close call, abandoning their vehicles on the edge of the abyss. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
As Margaret mentioned, the Morandi Bridge was hailed as a masterpiece of engineering when it was first built. At just over a kilometer long, the bridge featured on the cover of the Italian Sunday Courier in 1964, the year construction began, but it required extensive maintenance throughout the years. In fact, work to shore up its foundations was underway when the bridge collapsed. It was about 11:30 this morning local time when a section 200 meters long crumbled during a heavy rainstorm. Just 2 years ago, a University of Genoa engineering professor said maintenance costs for the bridge were so exorbitant, it would just be cheaper to build a new one. Now, we should say Italy has a good infrastructure record by global standards, but if you measure against other EU countries, it's not doing as well, due to underfunding and some suspected corruption. Italy has been a nation of bridge builders since Roman times, but lately there have been problems. Since 2004, at least 12 bridges and overpasses have collapsed in Italy. One of the most notorious cases was in Palermo, Sicily in 2015, when a brand new viaduct collapsed within days of opening. Now, nobody died in that incident, but public outrage was swift. Not surprising, considering another Sicilian bridge had collapsed the year before with 3 cars on it. So what's behind this? Well, a decade ago, Italy was one of the EU's top spenders on roadway infrastructure, second only to France. But the global financial crisis hit the country hard. Already carrying a tremendous amount of national debt, Italy just cut infrastructure spending right to the bone, from some 14 billion euros in 2008 to less than 4 billion just 2 years later. Slowly, it's been ticking back up since then, but it's still below the EU average. And then there's another problem. Mafia-owned companies are believed to have largely taken over the cement and reconstruction industries, raising fears of poor quality concrete, dodgy workmanship, and paying inspectors to just look the other way.
Here's a look at what else we're working on tonight on The National, how the hundreds of wildfires burning in BC are having a real impact far from the flames.
What is it like to return home when your home is a crime scene? We're there as people in Fredericton head back to the apartment complex where a gunman killed 4 people on Friday.
First, though, the White House is once again tonight defending an insulting tweet from Donald Trump. The U.S. president certainly knows how to hurl mud, as he demonstrated today, attacking former White House aide and current nemesis, Omarosa Manigault-Newman, again. But this time, it's the word that he used that's causing so much controversy. He took to Twitter to call her a, quote, crazed, crying lowlife and a dog. It's not the first time he's insulted someone or picked on a woman or a member of a minority group. And as Thomas Degla tells us, that's the issue.
No matter the day or time, the president's house draws a crowd, even when he's inside tweeting insults.
We're just asking people what they make of the president of the United States calling a human being a dog.
He shouldn't even be in the White House calling people dogs. That's low life.
It's just not something we use in everyday life, describing each other that way.
He's called ex-pal Omarosa Manigault-Newman wacky and deranged, but this put-down feels especially bruising.
If he would say that publicly, what else would he say about me privately? He has absolutely no respect for women, for African Americans.
Sure, his candidacy was built on insults.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
And he's long been known for crude language. The target of his latest attacks even released another tape in which campaign aides discuss how to spin Trump's alleged use of the N-word.
Well, it depends on what scenario you're talking about. And he said, well, why don't you just go ahead and put it to bed?
The White House press secretary couldn't promise there isn't a tape of Trump saying the N-word.
I can tell you that I've never heard it.
She defended him as an equal opportunity mocker.
The president is somebody who's always going to fight fire with fire.
And back outside, his supporters don't seem to mind.
As far as the economy and things like that, which affect me personally, I think that he's doing a pretty good job.
In order to, I guess, run the most powerful country in the world, is not really have time for slackers, I guess.
The language may not usually fit this House, but as ever, it's fit for Trump. Thomas Dagler, CBC News, Washington.
So the White House was quick to defend that Trump's comments at his former protege aren't sexist or racist, pointing out that this is far from the first time he's used that word as a vicious put-down.
The president has said similar things about a number of individuals, certainly that are not African American or any other minority.
It's true, the president has actually used the word dog to insult his enemies before. He's slammed Mitt Romney for having choked like a dog in the 2012 presidential race, claimed Hillary Clinton cheated like a dog in the last campaign, and said actress Kristen Stewart acted like a dog during a cheating scandal. In fact, Trump's hurled canine insults at least a dozen times in the past.
The fact is the president's an equal opportunity person that calls things like he sees it.
But his attack on Manigault Newman is just the latest in the growing list of African Americans the president has publicly denigrated.
So I think it's awful. I think it's disgusting.
In recent weeks, Trump called CNN anchor Don Lemon the dumbest man on television. He questioned the intelligence of LA Lakers star LeBron James and repeatedly said that Maxine Waters, an African American member of Congress, has a low IQ.
Low life. She's a low life.
So as the president continues to lob insults at his former White House aide, it's unlikely Trump will moderate his language in spite of the criticism.
To Fredericton now, where after the deadly shooting at an apartment complex, the windows are boarded up, but the barricades have been taken down. Days after 4 people, including 2 police officers, were gunned down, residents were allowed back today. But returning to their lives may be a bit more difficult. As Harry Forrestal explains, neighbors of the suspected shooter have mixed emotions about the place they call home.
Signs of chaos and death linger among these modest apartments, windows shattered, pierced by bullets, and workers scrambling to replace glass and doors kicked in by police.
Fixed a lot of frames, doors that the police broke down. It's probably about 20 frames that they broke, maybe about 9 or 10 doors just busted up.
It was a wake-up call no one here expected, a 7 a.m. alarm of gunshots, sirens, and terrified tenants.
They didn't see us in the room here because we'd be standing right here and police would be running back and forth.
Calvin Cole huddled in his basement apartment, the shooter directly overhead. For him, this is no longer home, it's a crime scene.
If it wasn't for subsidized housing, I'd be gone already. I don't want to be here.
Outside, a fresh layer of blacktop covers part of the driveway, an attempt to erase evidence of bloodstains, but not the memories.
I still see the blood on the sidewalk. I still see. It's not a nice image.
It's just shocking being back, I guess. It's very shocking. Just gotta cope with it.
About 70 residents have been waiting to return to these subsidized apartments. Unable to afford to move, many are just happy to be home and reunited.
The small one right here in the back is Bella. She's the one that got lost.
Some even managed to find a silver lining. A neighborhood once filled with strangers now has a new sense of community.
I didn't even know half the people that lived here before, and I know everyone now, so. I mean, that's probably for 2 reasons, because of this, and we want to know who's in our community now.
And Adrian, John Stewart, the man we just heard from there, told me that he and other tenants in the neighborhood are going to get together to hold a barbecue as a fundraiser to raise even a small amount of money to give to the Red Cross, who provided them shelter during the period of evacuation.
So, Harry, over the last few days, we've all been talking a lot about how the police are asking people not to speculate, and yet they aren't providing a lot of hard information. I gather police are well aware of the concerns about that information flow.
They absolutely are well aware of that. In fact, Adrienne, tonight, Leanne Fitch, the chief of police here, issued a statement to the public on Facebook in which she said that she was aware that she was being called tight-lipped by the media and by the public, but there was a good rationale for that, that she had to protect the integrity of the investigation and whatever subsequent court case comes out of this. But she also acknowledged another reality, and that is that there are questions being asked to which she simply doesn't know the answers and won't know the answers until this investigation is complete, and she's asking people to please be patient.
Okay, Harry Forrestal. Thanks so much, Harry.
All right, Adrienne.
CBC News will have live coverage of the regimental funeral this Saturday, hosted by Harry in Fredericton. Now, the coverage begins at 11 Eastern, that's noon Atlantic, with a procession. The service at the local arena, the Aitken University Centre, will follow. That service is not open to the public, but it will be live streamed at the Grant Harvey Centre. And, of course, anyone who can't make it there in person can watch live on CBC News Network.
People in British Columbia are dealing with a public health hazard that could loom over them for days. Heavy smoke blanketing parts of BC from the wildfires burning all across that province. There are nearly 600 fires still going, even more than the record-breaking numbers from last year's devastating season. Canadian forces are now set to arrive in the coming days to join this fight. Military aircraft are also on the way to help move equipment and help with evacuations. Thousands of people have been forced from their homes already. Many more are waiting on word to leave. Still, even in places that aren't threatened by the actual fire, all that smoke can be a real cause for concern. As Briar Stewart tells us, it could even have long-term health effects.
Queen Elizabeth Park is a popular spot in Vancouver, in part because of the views, which is why Tom Bell brought his brother, who's visiting from Ohio, here.
I thought this is the place to bring him, but today, not so much, because you can't see a thing.
Because the city skyline and North Shore mountains are all cloaked in smoke, which is wafted down from forest fires burning in northern BC. Air quality advisories have been issued throughout the province, including in Metro Vancouver.
This instrumentation here is what we use to monitor levels of a variety of different air pollutants.
Inside one of the monitoring stations, Francis Reese explains how they track the number of fine particles in the air. Right now, levels are so high that they could affect some people's health.
So people with things like asthma, COPD, diabetics, and then in addition as well, infants and the elderly are also at increased risk.
And officials are urging those groups to cut back on the amount of time they spend outside. Margaret Burrell has already done that because she says all the smoke is tough on her lungs.
I have never experienced anything like this. And I've lived in Vancouver a long, long, long time.
When it comes to the otherwise healthy population, the smoke may simply be irritating. But as forest fires are becoming a frequent part of the summer season, this professor says it's important to think about long-term exposure to this type of pollution.
We've got lots of places in the world, unfortunately, that this is a daily occurrence, and we certainly know that that has very long-lasting health impacts.
Such as heart and lung disease. He says pollution can even shorten your natural lifespan.
We don't really know that specifically in terms of wildfire smoke, but we would expect that if people are exposed repeatedly, again, for weeks or months out of every year, year after year, that they would start to see some of those same kinds of impacts.
If smoky summers become the norm for many communities, all that lingering haze could affect much more than just the view. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
We're keeping an eye on a number of other developing stories tonight. A terror investigation is underway in the UK after a car crashed outside the Houses of Parliament. This was a scene in Westminster this morning shortly after it happened. Footage from the BBC shows a car swerving onto the people on the street there before finally hitting a barrier. 3 people were hurt, and the driver of the car, a 29-year-old man, was arrested. Police say they're still trying to figure out the motive, but because of where it happened and that it appears to have been deliberate, they are treating it as a terrorist act. And the high-profile trial of U.S. President Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, is now heading to closing arguments. His defense team rested its case today without calling him or any other witnesses to testify. Closing arguments are set to start tomorrow morning. Manafort has pleaded not guilty to 18 charges related to bank and tax fraud.
Ahead tonight on The National, the details are horrifying here. Hundreds of priests preying on thousands of children. How the Catholic Church allegedly covered up decades of abuse in Pennsylvania.
And deportation would have meant near certain death. We'll take you behind bars at a U.S. detention center to hear from a Mexican journalist who was stuck in life-threatening limbo.
And a little later on The National, our moment of the day, how one man decided to make the best of a simple mistake that sent him thousands of kilometers in the wrong direction.
I was supposed to go to Inuvik. My luggage is there, but I'm not. I'm in Rankin Inlet and about to board that plane.
It's a shocking breach of trust. Priests allegedly preying on more than 1,000 children in Pennsylvania, according to an explosive new report covered up by Catholic Church for decades. It's described as the largest and most comprehensive investigation into abuse within the church ever in the United States. And the stories are disturbing. Stephen D'Souza has the details that, we warn you, some may find upsetting.
He would always have his hands on me.
When you have the priest touching you every day, you know, that's a hard memory to have.
The stories of survivors and the details of the 884-page grand jury report are difficult to hear.
Father Robert Malzahner groomed his middle school students for oral sex by telling them how Mary had to lick Jesus clean after he was born.
The 2-year investigation lays out in graphic detail allegations against more than 300 priests, involving more than 1,000 children. Though the Attorney General says, for all the horrific stories of abuse spanning 7 decades, there are probably more victims who didn't come forward. The backbone of the investigation, the church's own records, documenting, prosecutors say, the systematic cover-up.
Above all else, they protected their institution at all cost.
But for all the report reveals, there is still much hidden. The names of more than 24 current and former clergy are redacted as they challenge the findings in court. Among those named as complicit, Archbishop Donald Wuerl, one of America's highest-ranking Catholic officials. He was Bishop of Pittsburgh for 18 years, and while he warned the Vatican of the problem, the report says he helped move abusive priests from church to church. Today, he defended his actions and joined others offering apologies.
I humbly offer my sincere apology.
We all must take this report to heart.
But after scandals in Boston, Dallas, and elsewhere, advocates say that's not enough.
They need civil investigations of these dioceses and not rely on church reporting because we see and have been proven by this grand jury report that they cover up.
The Pennsylvania Attorney General says now that they've lifted the veil of secrecy, the next step, change the statute of limitations, because so many of the crimes listed happened so long ago that many of the priests named will never be charged. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
Well, the Vatican declined to comment on the Pennsylvania report. The Catholic Church has struggled, obviously, with sex abuse scandals for many decades, and many Catholics have looked to Pope Francis as a figure who could potentially modernize the Church. Earlier this year, Pope Francis became the first pontiff to publicly denounce a culture of abuse and cover-up, and his zero-tolerance approach was put to the test just last month when he accepted the highest-level resignation from the Church to date. It was Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, the former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who stepped down amidst accusations of sexual abuse. Yet observers say Pope Francis's track record in handling abuse is actually mixed. Earlier this year, he drew widespread criticism, defending a Chilean bishop accused of covering up for that country's most notorious abuser priest. He eventually accepted the bishop's resignation. We have a lot more ahead tonight on The National. He says it was the best mistake of his life. We'll hear from the Winnipeg man. Of course, he's from my hometown, who took the wrong flight thousands of kilometers in the wrong direction.
First, though, you will meet a Mexican journalist who spent months in a U.S. detention center after his asylum claim was denied. Our conversation from behind bars on the toll of time in prison. Next.
Es mejor enfrentar el momento dado la muerte en México que seguir en este lugar.
Mexico is on course for its bloodiest year ever. Violence linked to gangs and drugs helped push the number of murders to a record 16,000 by the end of June. It also continues to be one of the world's most dangerous places to be a journalist. Just last month, 2 reporters were silenced, murdered in separate shootings for apparently digging just too deep. Emilio Gutierrez is an investigative journalist who fled Mexico before it cost him his own life, only to find himself behind bars after seeking asylum in the U.S. In June, I visited Gutierrez at an immigration holding facility in Texas. Tonight, another chance to hear about the danger of his past and the uncertainty of his future.
fighting his deportation from a U.S. detention center in El Paso, along with his son.
He sought asylum in the U.S. and was summarily
test
denied.
Case, a Mexican journalist has asked for asylum because he says the military has threatened to kill him.
All right, El Paso Processing Center, 15 minutes.
Head southwest on East Yandle Drive toward North St. Frame Street.
Okay, you're the boss. So about a decade ago, Emilio Gutierrez was writing about corruption in the Mexican military, and that's when he was hunted and threatened and attacked by the Mexican military. So it was around that time that he tried to seek asylum in the United States, and his case has been winding its way through the courts ever since. An American judge decided that Emilio should be deported. So Emilio and his son have been in detention here in El Paso since December, and we've been trying to get in, and the final word is that yes, we can, but we can only get audio, not video, which is what this is all about. There's so many questions to ask these two, including, you know, how long do you think you can hang on? And what exactly is likely to happen if you do get sent back to Mexico? We'll see what we get.
Oscar. I'm Adrian. You guys are gonna have a video. 1 hour. Yeah, 1 hour. Okay, thank you.
My first question for either one of you, but mostly you, Emilio, how are you?
Es una experiencia por demás desagradable, en donde las autoridades buscan destruir la autoestima. Yo he pensado que es mejor enfrentar en un momento dado la muerte en México que seguir en este lugar en donde estamos viviendo la espera de la muerte todos los días.
What's it like to hear your dad talk like this?
Well, it's very depressing hearing him like talking like that, because well, we're together, you know, and if he loses, I lose, and so we're both in dangerous if we go back into Mexico.
What was the moment when you first knew in Mexico that you were in big trouble?
La agresión directa de un general en mi contra, después el allanamiento en mi casa, en nuestra casa, después de que vi cómo era vigilado por militares.
Oscar, the decision seemed to be that the judge wasn't sure your dad was a journalist, and then also said that the Mexican government has a program to protect him.
It doesn't work. It's the same government that does that program, so we're running away from that government. En México no hay protección para los periodistas. La opinión del juez al asegurar que en México podríamos lograr la protección es una locura. A mí me gustaría que pasara un fin de semana en Ciudad Juárez sin protección, para que se dé cuenta de la gravedad y de la irresponsabilidad con la que se condujo al negarnos el asilo.
The longer you stay in here, the longer your son has to stay in here. I mean, at some point, your fight might be hurting him.
Es algo que me llena de dolor, que todos los días lamento. Y espero que algún día me comprenda.
nombre?
Mío, Luis.
Luis? Luis? Ernesto?
Yeah.
So, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do?
Yo soldado. Yo americana.
Americana?
Como la migra.
Americano?
Sí, americano.
Not Mexican. They're actually saying they want to be Americans?
Estamos pobres. Estamos pobres.
Okay, we'll get on that. Okay, thank you so much. Yes. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. I have chosen to specialize in Mexican political asylum, and so what I basically do is try to give refuge to refugees.
As you know, we went in, we spoke with Emilio. This section is just a little bit where he's a bit expressive.
Yo he pensado que es mejor enfrentar el momento dado la muerte en México que seguir en este lugar.
I'm wondering, anything surprise you about that?
It's traumatizing to be locked up when you've not committed a crime, because he is now being persecuted by the American government. This is outright persecution. You know, it's payback for him denouncing Mexico and denouncing the U.S., and there's no other reason why he shouldn't be released. Absolutely none.
I can imagine a number of Americans listening to this saying, A, don't care, B, so what that he's a journalist? What are they not getting?
What they're not getting is that the best and I think only hope for for democracy in Mexico is transparency and accountability. And the one institution that is in the best position to do that is the Mexican press.
But what does that have to do with them, though?
It keeps Mexicans at home. You want to keep Mexicans at home? Help Mexicans stay at home by being able to file complaints and deal with human rights abuses.
Well, and live and work without fear of being killed for it.
Exactly.
What happens to Emilio if he gets deported?
If he goes back home to Chihuahua, where he has his ancestral home, he's dead. They would kill him. He's just another troublemaker that needs to be taken care of.
So to figure out what it's really like for a journalist in Mexico, we're going to head into Juarez. So where we're heading is right to that red X. That's a sculpture right in the middle of Juarez.
Ciudad Juarez, one of the most violent
Several
cities
hundred
in the
people
world.
have been killed there since the beginning of the year.
Lined people up against a wall and opened fire.
Mexican authorities say new information has surfaced in connection with the deaths of 3 people.
The real problem in the police department right now is corruption.
There are a lot of murdered journalists in Mexico, and their cases go unsolved. So we're going to speak with one of the premier investigative journalists in Mexico. She works for a newspaper called El Diario de Juarez. So Sandra Rodriguez has spent years digging into what and who is behind the violence, and there's a price for that. She left Juarez for a few years after some specific threats, and just there, right by her desk, is a shrine to a fellow reporter killed in the storm of danger here.
Estamos viviendo la espera de la muerte.
He's broken by the detention center right here.
In the case of Emilio, the judge said, you'll be fine in Mexico because there is a program to protect journalists. I mean, your face immediately just screwed up. What do you make of that?
If he fears to be here, and the only protection he has is this program of the government is like useless. There are a lot of examples of how this program have failed to other journalists, like very specific examples of people killed or threat, etc.
Well, isn't part of the problem too that if you're writing about the military and the government, which are so connected, and you're writing about corruption within the two of them, how can you trust those organizations to protect you?
That's the foundation of the fear that Mexico is, the population is living, because you don't trust authorities. That's the worst scenario, where the police or the people that's supposed to protect you is the people that is scaring you or threatening you, or because you don't know. In this environment, you don't know anything.
What does a threat in Mexico actually for you look like? What does that sound like?
It was something that I was kind of expecting, because I was like testing what can you do, what you cannot do. And I thought that this was particularly dangerous, and they said don't, they sent a message. But I don't like to talk about it because, seriously, I don't like to talk about it.
So you stopped writing about that subject?
That is specific subject. They didn't want names in the stories, specific names. And we kind of knew it, and we did it, not just me. But that is not, seriously, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
BH Chicago, final recall.
Esto es una llamada de y pagada por El Paso Processing Center. Bueno.
Oscar, it's Adrian. How are you?
Really good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So do you know what the next stage is for you?
The last separators or something.
Hola, Emilio. ¿Cómo está? It's Adrian.
Todo bien.
Are you able to let us know if something happens with your case?
Yo tengo ya sus teléfonos y yo inmediatamente les comunico.
Gracias, muchas gracias, Emilio.
Ok, muchas gracias.
Well, a lot has happened since we brought you that story in June. Emilio and Oscar were released from the El Paso Detention Center on July 26th, but their immigration status remains unclear. Today, a judge confirmed the pair's next hearing will be in late October. In the meantime, Emilio will take up a fellowship at the University of Michigan next month, studying security issues affecting the media.
That's a happy ending almost. We rarely have those on this show. Next on The National, it's the sort of cast we haven't seen in decades, why there's so much riding on the success of the new movie, Crazy Rich Asians.
These people aren't just rich, they're crazy rich.
Oh, you really should have told me that you're like the Prince William of Asia.
That's ridiculous. Much more of a Harry.
It kind of makes me cry right now. Because you don't see that growing up. You don't feel like you can be the hero of your own story.
But first, it was a celebration 7 years in the making in Iqaluit today. Young hunters from the community successfully harvested a bowhead whale. There were lots of cheers like this coming from the water this afternoon, and the CBC's Iqaluit crew was there on a boat reporting in a nuktuk-tuk. Right now, the whale is being dragged to the city where it will be shared among the community. A successful bowhead harvest can actually feed hundreds of people, and while it's been a traditional part of Inuit culture, this is only the second time in 100 years they've been able to legally hunt it. Tonight on The National, new details on the condition of the German tourist shot in the head on an Alberta highway. The 60-year-old man is still unable to talk or move his right side, and he's being transported back to Germany. He's been in hospital since he was shot while driving his family to Banff National Park. Police initially thought it was a case of road rage, but they've since said it may have been a case of mistaken identity.
I declare the motion carried.
And those cheers are from Premier Doug Ford's PC party as a bill slashing the size of Toronto City Council passed today in the Ontario Legislature. The bill, which cuts the number of city councillors from 47 to 25, has come under intense criticism. It received no support today from the opposition parties, but Ford says he thinks a smaller government will help the city operate more smoothly. In Vermont tonight, history has been made in the race to become the state's next governor. Christine Hallquist has become the first openly transgender candidate to be nominated for governor by a major U.S. party. She defeated 3 other Democrats in tonight's primary. She is now one step closer to becoming the first transgender U.S. governor. And in British Columbia, a Christian university has decided to stop requiring students to sign a covenant that bans sex outside of heterosexual marriage. Trinity Western University says signing the covenant will be optional for students starting this fall, but it will still be mandatory for faculty and staff. That covenant was at the heart of a prolonged legal battle over Trinity Western's plan to open a law school. Law societies in Ontario and BC said they would not accredit graduates over concerns about discrimination. And the Supreme Court sided with them this past June, saying they were within their right to do so.
Well, its creators turned down a guaranteed payday for a more traditional and risky theater release. The movie, Crazy Rich Asians, opens across North America tomorrow with a lot riding on it. As Tashana Reed tells us, it's a high-stakes gamble with the potential to really change the Hollywood landscape.
The Nick you're dating is Nick Young? Yeah, you guys know them or something?
Hells yeah.
It's a love story that crosses borders and cultures. An American Chinese woman flies to Singapore with her boyfriend for a wedding. And that's when things get crazy.
Oh, you really should have told me that you're like the Prince William of Asia.
That's ridiculous. Much more of a Harry.
Crazy Rich Asians is an adaptation of the best-selling trilogy by author Kevin Kwan. It features an Asian director, all-Asian cast, and tells a contemporary Asian-American story, something Hollywood hasn't done in 25 years. The film star Constance Wu never thought she'd land a role like this.
It kind of makes me cry right now. Because you don't see that growing up. You don't feel like you can be the hero of your own story.
All the way left, guys. Of the top Hollywood films in the last decade, only 6% had Asian characters on screen. That's why the Los Angeles premiere at the iconic Chinese theater was a special moment.
It's something that I think all of us who work in the entertainment industry had wanted to see for so long. You know, valid, legitimate, mainstream representation.
Rebecca Sun has been capturing the hype around this movie for The Hollywood Reporter. She says the stakes are high, and Hollywood studios are waiting to see what it does at the box office.
If this does well, then okay, we're going to try another one. If it doesn't do well, then you know what? Our fears were confirmed. We're not going to make another Asian American film for another quarter century.
The Vancouver Asian Film Festival hosted an advanced screening. For Kevin Lee, he personally wants to see this film succeed. His Canadian web series, Ultra Rich Asian Girls, was recently bought by NBC Universal.
For a long time, Hollywood and investors have said, Asians don't make money. So this film will signal to future productions and future investors that the Asian genre, the Asian Canadian, Asian American genre, is accepted into the mainstream.
For those who got a sneak peek, they're giving Crazy Rich Asians 2 thumbs up.
It's nice to see a story just about Asians and in an Asian setting and not the smart Asian or the geeky Asian.
There's handsome men, it's about rich families, and the clothes are beautiful, and there are mean women in it. So it's really good, regardless of race.
And the hope is that it won't be another 25 years before Hollywood sees another film like this. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
Our moment of the day is next, so we will hear from a Winnipeg man who accidentally embarked on a 14-hour flight and turned it into the best mistake of his life.
A Newfik? What are you talking about? We're not going to a Newfik. We're going to a Iqaluit. And so then, that's when the penny dropped, and I was like, oh my God, I'm on the wrong flight.
Imagine flying more than 2,000 kilometers in the wrong direction. That is what happened to a Winnipeg man over the weekend. He was supposed to fly from Yellowknife to Inuvik in the Northwest Territories. Instead, he ended up in Iqaluit. He did finally make it to his destination today, and that's where we spoke with him. And we reached out to his wife back home, who has some thoughts. That's our moment.
I was supposed to go to Inuvik. My luggage is there, but I'm not. I'm in Rankin Inlet. So I asked the flight attendant for confirmation at the airplane. I was like, so is this flight going to Inuvik? And she said, yeah, eventually. So like, oh, okay, weird answer, but whatever.
He said he handed over his boarding pass and they ushered him out the door and that was it.
So then we land in Rankin Inlet.
Well, I didn't actually know what was going on at first.
I was like, oh my God, I'm on the wrong flight in the exact wrong destination, about to head to Iqaluit, which is like 3,000 kilometers east of where I need to go.
I was just thankful that there was no emergency.
I decided to roll with it and decided to make it a fun journey for everybody involved.
He actually said it was really fun, that the whole flight crew was really good to him.
I am in the right place, a day late.
Well, you know, I do most of the navigating when we're traveling, but that's not to say that Chris doesn't know where he's going.
It's the best mistake, one of the best mistakes of my life.
Okay, and so let's be completely fair to this flight attendant.
Yes.
Apparently, someone had come up to her earlier saying, are we going to Maui? And she's like, sure. And then he comes up and says, are we going to Inuvik? She says, yeah, eventually. Thinking that they were all just kidding around. Yeah, he wasn't paying any attention.
And also, to be fair to the airline who is investigating, the computers were down, so this was all done manually. There were a bunch of planes out there. He was sort of rushing around. And we were talking during one of our meetings that this happens to me at Billy Bishop all the time. I don't know that I'm going on the right plane. It's a miracle that this hasn't happened to me. It's a
that's
Winnipeg
why there are
affliction.
4 of us, Rosie, just in case it does happen to you.
Come find me if it happens
I
to
will,
me.
I promise.
That's the National for August 14th. Good night.